In today's video, we're going to be starting a brand new series called The Art of War. In this series, I'll be teaching you and helping you from the very start till you are ready to become a professional fighter on the field, killing people left and right and getting those juicy merits. So, in this introduction for the series on this episode, we'll be discussing the fundamentals of pairings, why some pairings work and some don't, why you should start by maining troops, and the fundamentals and the starting keys of positioning in the open field. So stick around because this is going to be a juicy series and you don't want to miss it. What is up guys, MEOWER here back with a brand new Call of Dragons video. So before we get this video started, we finally have our winners for the giveaway that started 3 days ago. So a big congratulations to the following winners: Finn, Sulking Brook, Shoyo, Kurama Yoko, and Lane. Be sure to keep an eye out on your DMs because I will be reaching out and handing each of you your rewards for joining. Thank you so much for everyone that participated and joined the Discord. We wouldn't have gotten this far without you guys. So, on a separate note now, let's start with our series. In today's video, we're going to be starting with the fundamentals of how you should pair your commanders because I see so many people using incorrect pairings or just assume why some commanders work and some don't, and so on and so forth. So, the first part from this video will be the pairings and why some work and why some don't. So, I always love my meta and I always love the pairings and I always like to experiment with some commanders and see who synergizes with who and who doesn't synergize with who. So we're going to be taking this lineup right now as an example to why some pairings work and why some pairings don't. We're going to be starting with infantry. So for infantry, what do you look for in any troop? You look for defensive capabilities, look for survivability, and you look for more stat boosts for infantry, especially. So, for example, we got Madeline that gives survivability, a stat boost, and as well as just overall everything infantry need. So, gives them a shield, gives them damage resistance, and it gives them just that extra oomph and stats, whether if it's more HP or just the damage reduction in general. And then we're going to look at our infantry commanders and see the lineup of who we can pair. Usually I go with Madeline Garwood, and the reason for that is because it gives them survivability, gives them even further survivability from Garwood, it gives them better stats overall, and it just gives them defensive options that they can survive and do their job as a tank. So not every single march is meant to do damage and get a lot of merits. Okay, there are some marches that are meant to do damage, for example, like Lily of Velen, there is Syndrome Freygar, but there are some marches that are meant to be more on the utility side, such as Nicothea, marches with Indus, and marches with Pan, and so on and so forth. So you gotta have the assumption that some marches will outperform others, but does not necessarily mean another march is by any means bad. Some marches enable each other, such as Nicothea enables Syndrome Freygar to play a bit more aggressive. Nicothea allows my other marches to deal even more damage from the defense break and play a bit more aggressive from the shield. For example, if I'm running in this in the lineup, I'm gonna have more damage dealt from my marches plus a little bit of healing allow me to play a bit more aggressive. But if I don't have those options, I will not be playing as aggressive as I usually should because I over time you'll start to understand your limits of what engagements you can win and what engagements you can't win. So when you're setting up your fundamental marches like your core 5 march, like this will be your bread and butter, everything else will be experimentations, but as well, you gotta keep in mind you don't always need to run 5 marches. Sometimes your troop amounts doesn't allow you, your commander pairings don't allow you, so you're gonna be starting off with a core march, for example, a core single march. Like that will be your bread and butter, and then you're gonna add a second march to it, and a third, and a fourth, and so on and so forth, till you find yourself getting ready with all the pairings that you need to end up with a proper 5 march that will carry you throughout the game of Call of Dragons and will help you get those merits in the open field fighting. So, just because a commander doesn't synergize with another commander does not necessarily mean that commander is wrong. It could be you're just pairing incorrectly, or they're just not suited for the task you want them to fit. So lesson number one in the art of war is find your proper pairings and make those your core. You don't want to keep running around the bush, peckering and so many commanders, and then not ending up maxing any of them. Focus on the troops you want to work on bit by bit, which will bring us to the second part of this video. For the second part of the video, I always keep getting asked the same question. Meower, which troop should I main? Well, to answer that question, you gotta answer two questions beforehand. One, do you have the core commanders for that troop? Two, do you have the core artifacts for that troop? If you tick at least one of those boxes, especially the commander ones, then you should heavily consider meaning that troop first off before you find what you love. So, what do I mean by that? Because this is a bit of a conflicting answer. So, starting off, I like archers. So, I started meaning archers. I started collecting the commanders for archers and I started awakening them first before I started working on anything else. So, you gotta set a list of priorities. I know I always keep discussing goals and priorities on this channel in so many of my videos. That's because it will help you focus on your goals and tunnel vision on them without getting stressed of not having everything maxed or not having so many options. Sometimes being a one trick pony can bring you a long way forward than being a jack of all trades, master of none. So, for example, you want to main archers. I made a video about it, but I'll make a quick summary for it. Archers specialize in DPS and counterattack and some slight utility. So, if you feel like you like those three stuff, but you still need to micro heavily and need to be on alert so you don't overextend, because overextending on archers, for example, is extremely punishing, then archers are the troops for you. If you like to play safe, poke, have a lot of skill damage, but not that much DPS in general, but over time it does add up and add some CC to the mix, and just having the longest range in the game and having people rage at you for just microing your troops a bit more than usual, or just a slight some micro will go a long way, along with a lot of AoE, but not that much survivability, then mages are for you. If you like to just throw your troops in the mix and go AFK and tank everyone and be unkillable and be like, oh my god, infantry need a nerf, then infantry are for you. And finally, if you like to sneak behind and run around people, snipe in, go out, or maybe not go out unless you're dead, but in general, just being a little sneaky, annoying farm killer sometimes, or someone that kills the backlines, then cavalry are for you. If you feel like any of those just fit you, I would advise you start meeting that troop and start seeing what you currently have and what you can fix in order to achieve the goal of maining. Now, do note that Call of Dragons is still a brand new game, so over time we're going to be seeing more commanders, making it easier for you to make more than one march for any singular troop type. As of now, the only march that we can't have more than two legendary commanders or two full legendary marches on them is currently mages. But that should be fixed within next season, as per the dev announcement stating that there are two mage commanders coming. So hopefully mage mains will be eating good next patch, though I hate mages because I am an archer main, but that's beyond the point. So if you feel like any of those criteria fit you, that should help you start by meeting your troops and start working towards your goals for maximizing those troops, whether if it's training far more troops, focusing on the Forge of Lights for those artifacts in order to get those up, because artifacts in general tend to be a very overlooked part in Call of Dragons because of how sometimes expensive they are or how unreachable like normal commanders they are, because you can get gold heads for commanders universals and just dump them and awaken them, but artifacts tend to be a bit more difficult with so many limiting factors such as the Forge of Light and the end of season artifact Compodium, plus the riches of the forest, and in general artifact keys tend to be a bit more difficult to obtain. So that is why specializing helps bypass that. So if you are a slice spender or anything, you can just slowly start accumulating. forged artifact keys, and when the time comes for a Forge of Light, you could at least just summon the artifact or get at least one or two copies from it if you are lucky or manage to spend a little here and there for it, and then slowly but surely work your way through becoming a main of any said troop. So, just to summarize, we want to focus the troop that we want in order to become a proper troop main and figure out what commanders we want to work on and what artifacts we want to work on so we don't get lost and start just panicking and be like, oh my god, there's so much stuff to do. It's not, in all honesty, running purple stuff like epics is not bad at all as long as you get the job done and fits your role in the open field fighting. And speaking of open field fighting, it's time to start discussing the fundamentals of positioning when you are fighting in the open field. For the final part of this video, we're going to be discussing positioning and how you should start to position your troops in general in a big cluster fight. Right here, I have one or rather two archer marches outside, one infantry march, and one mage march. So usually there are thresholds of range for each troop and each position that should happen. Right, and the way I feel like you should be marching is there are certain lines between each troop that you should not cross. So for example, right now this is the infantry range, this is the archer range, and this is the mage range. So mages tend to have the highest range in general, and they have more fire range than archers or infantry. That is why they should always be in the back line and not anywhere near archers, because you don't want to eat as many damage as archer does from the AoE from other mages. You want to dish out the damage to the enemy front line. I know I'm saying to focus the enemy front line if you are in a big cluster fight, because the sooner your front line starts to win, you can start moving up with your marchers and start to threaten their back line while you still have the buffer zone in front of you. So, say for example, they have an infantry here, they have an archer here, and they have a mage here. If you kill their infantry here, you are able to move up with your infantry to threaten their archers. Your archers will be able to start moving up to threaten their archers as well, and so will your mages, or your mages should just stop attacking or try to slightly position here on this side, because if their mages are attacking your archers, your mages should be able to attack their mages. You can also start adding infantry, cavalry to the mix, go around the back line, and just start to flank here, for example, and start threatening the mages in this area. So, the whole point of most open field fights is that the first person to be able to reach the other person's backline of mages tends to be the winner in most fights. So, there are also other factors in, such as the terrain or flying marches, which we'll be discussing more in depth as we progress through the series. But in general, the main fundamentals you gotta keep in mind is gotta layer your troops. If your mages and archers are attacking in the same field of range, you are missing out on so much survivability you could be having for your mages in general, because they will be eating too much AoE and their effectiveness will lower because most of their damage tends to come from skill damage, and skill damage tends to scale more with troop size and the current alive troops versus just the numbers and everything, because archers, most of their damage comes from normal attack and counterattack, so they can afford to be a bit more aggressive versus mages that need to be as passive as possible. So, again, in a quick summary, because I want to be more in depth for positioning in episode 2, this is just a little teaser. You want to layer your troops in a way that they are not in the same threat threshold as their other troop types. So, infantry will always be attacked by everyone else. So, infantry will be number 1, archers will be number 2, and mages will be number 3. Should always be in this order. If you don't have archers in the mix, you can just remove number 2 from the mix, remove um, archers completely, and just focus on mages and infantry. Though, if you are a smaller player, I would highly recommend you just do at least one or two troops and position correctly. Just because you're small does not mean you cannot be effective. And the most important thing I feel like most players tend to be more scared about is losing troops or feel like their hospitals are full or anything. Call of Dragons has a very nice feature, which is elixir healing. So you have no threat whatsoever of having troop deaths. So you can play a bit more aggressive, you can be more useful to your alliance, and ultimately get that win because there is nothing more satisfying than winning and having an empty hospital while doing so because it gives you a sense of achievement. Because if you have a full hospital when you are fighting, it means you're fighting neck and neck, you're having fun, and ultimately you're playing the game the way it's supposed to, which is fighting and having wars. So, on that note, I will probably conclude the first episode of the series. Though, if you have some suggestions and feedback for me in the comments down below, please let me know. This is the first time of me making a video in this style. I kind of winged a lot of the stuff, so I do appreciate the feedback because I want to improve this series a lot because I feel like it will help so many players in general and just up the competition in the game. And of course, the higher the competition in the game, the more fun everyone tends to have in the end. And on that note, thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please don't forget to drop a like. Don't forget to subscribe. Join the Discord. The link is in the description. And I will see you in the next video. Meow meow.